Hey, let me tell you something. I've enjoyed this summer series, and today I'm going to talk to you about doubts. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how sometimes in our faith journey we may have some doubts. I like the idea of some things more than I actually like doing them because of doubt. Doubt in people, doubt in myself, doubt in all kinds of stuff. For instance, I like the idea of weddings. Especially after the wedding. There's the party, there's the dance, there's all this exciting stuff that goes on, but I doubt my white boy dance moves. You follow me? And so when I get on the dance floor and they're playing some Kenny G, I'm good to go. I'm in there with my wife and I'm keeping it in the safe zone, and then suddenly the DJ goes from that to turn down for what, and I don't know what to do. I'm stuck out there. And I have it in my head that the wedding, the dance party is going to turn into really more of something that's about me than about the bride and groom. Like everyone's circling around and I'm doing dance moves and people are chanting my name. And I want that to happen so bad. But then when I'm actually in the moment, I really doubt my abilities. And I become even wider than I am now. And it's a wreck. People think something's wrong with me. They're calling 911. I'm like, no, I'm a diabetic. I'm fine. I'm just dancing. Everything's okay. I also have some doubts when it comes to my Razorbacks. I'm excited about this next football season. It's about to come on. We got some young recruits. But the idea of it's exciting, but then the idea of spending my whole day traveling there, getting into the stadium, fighting traffic, sitting out on a hot day to possibly watch us get really beat bad is something that doubt kind of takes over, and I decide against it. One final one. How many of you like to travel? Does anyone like traveling? Yeah, I like to travel. The problem with travel for me is the places I enjoy going typically require getting on an airplane. And I have some doubts about air flight. I have some doubts about airplanes. I have doubts about the people. And so I get excited about it. I get excited, man, we're on the way to the airport. We get to the airport. It's kind of when we get on the plane that it hits me. You're about to go really high in the sky in a big piece of metal. You're also going to be around a bunch of strangers that do crazy things. I actually found a few pictures. Maybe you've had some bad experiences with people on a plane. Here's a few examples. Take a look. Like you're just sitting there trying to watch your show. And you know what? If that happens to me, they better be so glad that scissors aren't allowed on a plane, because I would just fix that problem and save them some money right away. Or how about this one? Isn't that tough? That's tough to look at. I actually saw it online and I'm like, oh, that's awful. I'm going to make them see that since I had to see it. But have you ever been sitting there and you're at the window seat and you look over and someone has decided to creep their feet? Whoa. You got ahead of me, but we'll go ahead and talk about this one. Stuff like this happens on airplanes, and it creeps me out, and and I have no faith in mankind. And so, not only am I worried about what's happening up in the air, is this thing going to keep me alive? But I'm also worried about people's nasty feet, and people taking their shirt off, and people doing weird things on airplanes. And here's the biggest problem. You can please take that off the screen now. The biggest problem is when we get in the air and things are going good and my mind and my heart is on that beautiful beach that we're going to, and then we hit turbulence. Have you ever hit turbulence where you decided it's all over? Have you ever been there? I can hit just a little bit of turbulence and decide that, but maybe some of you, you're a little different. And I've learned a few things. When we hit turbulence, a couple of things I've learned to do is, number one, kind of look around at the people that are experienced in flight. They've been on a lot of flights. How are they reacting? Are they chill? Are they calm? If they're panicking, we're in trouble. And then I always look at the flight attendants. Are they still carrying like 40 drinks and just smiling as they're spilling everywhere? Or are they running to the front to get in their chair and strap in? If they're freaking out, I'm going to freak out. But what I've learned is, even though I have doubts about it, even though we're in the air and I'm terrified and we're miles above in an airplane as big as this room that could literally fit all of us, when we hit turbulence, normally I don't say what I want to say. Normally, I don't tell my wife, babe, I think this is the end. Even though I have those doubts, I keep them to myself. What I want to do in some moments is scream out, we're all going to die. That's what I want to say. But luckily, I don't do that. But a lot of times it's because when we have doubts, we feel like we're the only ones that have doubt, and so we keep those doubts to ourselves. Are you following me? I know the stats. You're more likely to die in a car. You're more likely to die in your bathtub. You're more likely to die rolling off your bed. You're more likely to die from fireworks. I hope that didn't happen this week for anyone. You're more likely to die from an asteroid hitting you than you are in an airplane, but yet I still have doubts about being in a plane. Is anyone else with me? Have some doubts? Does anyone struggle with getting on a plane? 4 of us, we can hang out afterwards. We can start a community group. We're hesitant to speak about our doubts because we do wonder if we're the only one that has them. And for most of us, church is the most uncomfortable place to share the doubts that we have. Church is not the place. In fact, maybe many of you grew up in a church where it was better for you to keep your doubts to yourself. It was better for you to put a mask on and act like you had it all together than to actually show up and say, hey, here's what's going on in my life. Maybe you would never approach your pastor or youth pastor and say, hey, this is what's happening, because you knew that you were in a place where everyone was supposed to pretend like they had it together. But let's be real, we all have seasons of our lives where we have doubts. And many of us are afraid to ask questions. Many of you grew up in Christian homes, and you believe what your parents believed. Many of us have our views on politics, religion, and so on because we adopted the politics and the religion and the beliefs that our families had. And if you grew up in a Christian home, I'm really glad you did. But if your faith is your parents' faith, then your faith will eventually crumble. You have to have your own faith. You have to learn why you believe what you believe. You have to understand Scripture. You have to have a faith that will go way beyond what you've been experiencing that you learned from mom and dad. Well, mom and dad said when this happens, we just believe. No, why do you believe that? Do you know why you believe what you believe? Do you know why you're coming to church? I'm not trying to make you not come to church anymore, by the way, but it's important that we have our own personal faith and our own personal relationship with Jesus. Otherwise, when doubts come in, we are going to struggle like crazy. Are you following me this morning? Are you following me this morning? Keeping quiet doesn't make your doubts go away. Keeping it to yourself does not. My mic here we go. Guys, is it me that's doing this? I'm screwing this on. All right. Many feel that they are stupid because they don't know it all. Like, I don't know everything about the Bible. I don't quite understand anything about the dinosaurs, and I don't understand a lot about the disciples, and were the disciples riding dinosaurs? How did all that work? Like, many people feel like since they don't have all the answers, they just keep it to themselves. And they continue to live and survive off of what their parents would have said or what their family or the people they grew up under. But let's be honest, many of us have doubts, me included. I have days where I have doubts. I have days where I hit turbulence and I struggle, and all the good that I was thinking about moments prior are lost in the storms of life. People who actually saw Jesus face to face, the disciples and those that walked with Jesus. Can you imagine what that would have been like? To just hang out with Jesus and watch him walk around and love people to a degree no one had ever witnessed before. To see Jesus go around and just completely destroy the theology that so many had. That Jesus, why are you hanging out with the poor people and the prostitutes? And Jesus is loving on them and going to their homes and praying for them and healing people. And just blowing people's minds. And here this group of guys are spending time with Jesus. And there's a story in the Bible. Mark, who was a friend of Jesus, he writes about in Mark chapter 9. And Jesus shows up on the scene, and some of his disciples are having a debate with some religious rulers. And here's what it says. In chapter 9, verse 16, Jesus says, "What are you guys arguing about?" A man in the crowd answered, "Teacher, I brought you my son. He's possessed by a spirit that has robbed him of his speech. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him to the ground. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive out the spirit, but they couldn't do it." Sounds a little bit like a horror story. Sounds a little crazy. And the dad just wants his son to get better. He's clearly desperate. Imagine if you had a child who was going through something, and maybe you have. You'll do whatever it takes. You'll go to whatever extreme for your kids, right? And so I imagine this man has gone to the religious rulers. He's gone to the disciples, and now he sees Jesus, and he's like, oh, there's Jesus. I know that he's done some things. Maybe I can talk to him. And it says in verse 20, they brought the boy to Jesus. And when the spirit in the boy saw Jesus, it immediately threw the boy into a convulsion. He fell to the ground, rolled around, foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the boy's father, how long has he been like this? From childhood, he answered. It's often thrown him into the fire or water to try and kill the boy. And then the man says this, but if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us. The dad says, if you can. There's two things that I get out of this. One, the man had doubt that Jesus could, in fact, heal his son. The other thing I believe he had doubt in is because he says, take pity on me. The man had doubt that he even deserved for Jesus to do something for his son. And I think when we think of doubt, it's like, well, doubt is, do you even believe in God? No, sometimes doubt is, do I even believe God will do in me what I know he can do because I don't deserve it? Do I believe that I even deserve for God to show up in my life? Do I even deserve for him to forget about my past and give me a future? And we have doubts a lot of times just in the confidence that God will deservingly do something in your life. And aren't you glad for the grace and mercy that extends beyond anything we can comprehend? Because let me just tell you right now, no, you don't deserve it, but he's going to do it anyway. You don't deserve his love and mercy and grace to the extent that you get it, but you get it anyway because that's the amazing God that we serve. He loves us so much. And so here's a man that's doubting Jesus' ability, and he's also doubting, do we even deserve, if he can, for him to show up in my son's life and heal him? If you can, if you could at least just take pity on us. He saw Jesus and he got very honest with Jesus. In those moments, we need to be honest. And in verse 9, chapter 9, 23, Jesus says, if you can, everything is possible for one who believes. Immediately, the boy's father exclaimed, I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief. That's where a lot of us live. Jesus, I do believe. I'm at church. I believe. I'm on the mountaintop. I believe. Things are good. I believe. I'm in the valley. Okay, Jesus, I need you to help me because I'm not believing so much today. Jesus, my belief isn't so strong today because things aren't working out the way I had hoped. I lost my job. I'm really sick. I lost a friend. My relationships are tough. Finances are in a real bind. Jesus, today, I believed yesterday when I was on the mountain, but in the valley, I'm really struggling to believe. Help my unbelief. So this man is simply saying, I do believe, but I don't. I have days I'm believing, but days like today when my son is sick, I'm really having a hard time believing. I'm having a hard time. I want to believe this, but I still have some questions, Jesus. But I want to believe. I want to have faith, but I'll be honest, I do have some doubts. He got very honest. And let me tell you, we live our life between belief and disbelief. That's where we reside. There are days when your belief and your faith and your ability to encourage others in your walk is at the top. And there are days where we are at the bottom and we struggle, and we live between those places most of our life. You're always going to have moments of doubt, but you're also going to have those amazing moments of faith. You're going to have those moments when you're on the plane dreaming of the big dream, the vacation destination, and you hit a few bumps and suddenly you forget all of the good and all of the things God has done and all the places God is taking you because of a moment where you're not real sure anymore that God is with you. You're not real sure anymore that God still has a plan for you. You're not real sure anymore that what God has done once in your life, He can do it again. And doubt begins to creep in. And people who leave the faith and leave their salvation and leave Jesus and leave it all and just say it's not real, it was fake the whole time. It's people that got to that low place and kept getting lower and finally walked away and decided not only will He not do it, He's not even there. He's not even real. He doesn't even exist. But I'm going to tell you something that may blow your mind. Owning your doubt can lead to you growing your faith. Owning your doubt can lead to you growing your faith. The problem is we don't own it a lot of times. We avoid it. We ignore it. We pretend it's not real. We pretend we're on the mountain. We come to church and act like everything is great. When in reality, we always say this is a place where it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to struggle with your faith. It's okay to step out and say, hey, I need some prayer today. It's okay to come to somebody in your group and say, I'm struggling. Can you be there for me? Can we hang out? Can we have a Bible study? Can we pray together? Whatever it may be. We all have those moments. Owning your doubt can lead to growing your faith. And it did for a guy in the Bible that we call Doubting Thomas. You've probably heard this story before, but let me share a few application points based on Thomas that will help us in our moments of turbulence. The moments where we forget all about what God can do and has done. The moments where we suddenly doubt that He can and we doubt that we deserve it. And this is something that maybe you're not needing right now, but let me tell you, I want you to take notes because you're going to need it at some point if you live on this earth very long. Jesus has died and He's been put in the grave. And think about the disciples. I think it's easy to really focus on when Jesus came back to life. But let's think about the 3 days that went on with the disciples. What must have they been feeling? Like, Jesus, was this whole thing a hoax? Was He just a really great illusionist? Was this a scam? Were we on some new TV show and there's hidden cameras and that blind guy was just an actor? Like, no telling what the thoughts were that he had, that the disciples had. Was Jesus even real? They hit some turbulence like crazy because while they watched Him on the cross, they must have been thinking at any moment, y'all, heaven is going to open. You just wait. And then He dies. And then they put Him in the grave. And then a few days go by of just brokenness. And one of them was very honest about his doubt. And his name was Thomas. And in John chapter 20, verse 24, it says, Thomas, one of the 12 disciples, he wasn't with the disciples when Jesus showed up. So the other disciples told him, we have seen the Lord. He's alive. Hey, Thomas, we were right. He really is who He said He is. Like, Jesus is alive, man. We were really broken for a few days, but He's alive. He came back to life and He is the Messiah. And it says, Thomas responds and says, unless I see the nail marks in His hands, unless I put my finger where the nails were and put my hands into His side, I'm not going to believe. I'm not going to believe it. Side note, I see what Christianity has become on social media and in the world today. And I can't help but relate to people who struggle with their faith when they see how Christians behave and how they take advantage of Scripture and take advantage of what Christianity is. I totally understand why we live in a world of people that have doubts. I understand why someone would need to put their hands on His side and put their hands in His hands and really know that it's Jesus. And we get to be that for some people. But it says this, a week later, His disciples were in the house again and Thomas was with them. The doors were locked, but Jesus came and stood among them and said, peace be with you. Jesus I think He had a great sense of humor. Like, the doors were locked. I don't know if they were scared or what, but suddenly Jesus just comes through the wall and shows up as a ghost. And there they are, maybe a little candlelight, and they're hanging out, just chilling. And Jesus just, boom, peace be with you. It's all good, y'all. I'm here, y'all. Peace be with you. Like, Jesus, that doesn't help us. Coming through the walls, just use the door. We know you're the Son of God, but just, come on, man, play by our rules. So He comes through the wall, says, peace be with you, and then He goes directly to Thomas. He says, put your finger here, see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." Then Jesus told him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. But blessed are those who have not seen, yet they have believed." There's a couple of things I want you to notice about this story. The first thing I want to encourage you to do in those moments of turbulence is I want you to stop ignoring your doubts. Stop pretending like you don't have any. Stop keeping it to yourself and hoping it'll go away. Understand that here is Thomas, one that walked with Jesus, and he's letting Jesus know and those around him, "Hey, I'm hurting, I'm broken, and I'm willing to go ahead and let you know I'm doubting. I don't have the belief and the faith that I wish I had right now. Guess what, guys? I have some doubts." He speaks it. He speaks it to those closest to him. He just lets them know. He stops ignoring it. And then number two, talk to somebody about it. If you've got some doubts, talk to someone. Don't hold it in. Don't keep it to yourself. He goes to the other disciples, the people that he knew loved him, the people that were close to him. And he says, "Guys, I'm letting you know this is what it's going to take for me to believe." He also got real honest by telling Jesus how he felt. And notice what Jesus does. Jesus comes through the wall, freaks them all out, and then instead of having pleasantries and saying hello to everybody and hanging out and high-fiving and fist bump, he goes directly to Thomas and says, "Thomas, I know you need this, man. I'm going to show up. I'm going to be in your life. I'm going to be present. I'm going to give you everything you need to know that I am who I said I am. So go ahead, do what you need to do to know that I am Jesus." Notice Jesus wasn't angry about his doubts. I think sometimes we decide that if we pretend like everything's okay and if we make Jesus feel like we're good, then he's not going to be upset. I've had moments in prayer where I've been cautious how I pray because I don't want to upset him. But notice Thomas was doubting. He had such a lack of faith. Yet Jesus wasn't upset with him. Thomas, he says, you needed to see this, so here it is. But then he goes on to say, "Blessed are those who can believe without seeing." I have days where I'm like Thomas. Listen to this. I have days where I'm like Thomas and listen, Jesus, I need to see it to believe it. I need something to happen. I think back on the moment where Jess and I were feeling called to plant a church. And I've told this story before, but I remember that morning getting up and I'm in the shower on September 15th of 2016. And I'm feeling this call to plant a church. And I just finally said, "Jesus, I am struggling with this. I feel it, but I just need some confirmation. My doubt is taking control, and we're about to say no to this because I'm just not sure. Today, I just need to see your hands. Today, I just need to see your side. Today, I need you just to bypass everything else and come directly to me in this moment. And I need to know that this is you." And it was just a few hours later that a lady that doesn't even know me well walks up to me and says, "God told me something today that I have to tell you." With tears in her eyes, she looked at me and said, "Whatever the dream is that God has put on your heart, stop trying to put it down, but pick it up and run with it. God has got this. And whatever the prophecies have been over your life as a teenager, God is going to make them come to pass." You talk about turning into a crybaby. Y'all think I cry here. You should have saw me crying. It was the ugliest cry you've ever seen. I couldn't even get any words out. And I'm just bawling because what did he do? Just like Thomas, he showed up and he let me see. He showed up and he was everything I needed in those moments. But then there are days where, like we had our launch day here, and we had so many people show up on our very first day. On that day, I was who Jesus mentioned in the latter part of the scripture. Blessed are those who believe without seeing. Those days when we're on the mountaintop. Those days when we are good. Jesus, man, bypass me. Go ahead and head over to the other Thomas. I'm good today. We live our life in the middle of belief and disbelief. And where are you today? Are you ignoring your doubts? Are you talking to anybody about what's going on in your life? That's why we encourage people, get in a good community group. My wife and I are leading a group, and we've got to sit around with some amazing couples and just share where we are in our walk. Hear stories of what God's done in their life. And guess what it does? It builds up our faith. It encourages us. It helps us on our journey, whether we're on the mountaintop or in the valley. One last story as I close. There's a story of Jesus feeding the 5,000, and right after he did that and the disciples were blown away and they witness another miracle, Jesus sends them out into a boat, out into the lake, and Jesus heads up to pray for a while. And he comes back down off the mountain and he sees the disciples are out in the lake a ways off. And it says in Matthew 14, verse 25, shortly before dawn, so it's getting dark, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified and said, "It's a ghost," and cried out in fear. Jesus, once again, man, you got to stop doing this, Jesus. Like, stop freaking everyone out. But Jesus just walks on the water, heads directly for them, and immediately said to them, "Take courage, it's me. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat and walked on the water and came towards Jesus. But when he saw the turbulence, he was afraid, and he began to sink. He cried out, "Lord, save me." And immediately, Jesus bypassed everything else, reached out his hand and caught him and said, "You of little faith, why do you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down, and when those were in the boat, worshiping him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." My third and final point, those seasons of doubt, the storms of life, where you hit that turbulence that shakes your faith, you got to keep your eyes on Jesus. You got to keep your eyes on him. You've got to know that he's got you. Peter's facing a little bit of wind, a little bit of turbulence, and he loses his faith. And he begins to sink. Some of you here today, you feel like you have followed Jesus, but you're sinking. Life is catching up with you, and you're barely keeping your head above water. I want to encourage you, keep your eyes on Jesus. I also think it's really interesting how the other disciples, the storm's coming, they see Jesus, they're a little bit of fear for a while, and they begin to worship him. You are going to be in seasons of your life where you have a couple of options. You can either worry or you can worship. I want to encourage you, just worship him in the storms. Worship him in the turbulence. Choose to keep your eyes on him no matter what. Choose to trust him even when it's not the way you would have done it. Choose to just choose Jesus at all times. Keep your eyes on him when you're sinking. Know that he'll bypass everything else to get to you because he loves you. It says, while he had little faith. Notice Peter sometimes gets a bad rap for this story. Like, man, come on, Peter. But you notice he's the only one, while he had little faith, he's the only one that had enough faith to step out of the boat. Everybody else stayed comfortable. Everybody else missed out on the opportunity to do something crazy, a miracle, walking on the water, watching Jesus save him. Doubt will keep you so far away from God's promise for your life. Not because you have doubt, but because you keep it to yourself, because you ignore it, and because you take your eyes off Jesus. You want to allow God to accomplish the God things in your life, you got to step out of the boat. Even when there's turbulence, even when there's a storm coming, even when there's all these distractions around you called the enemy and called life, even when it's not exactly ideal situation, even when the science doesn't make sense, how in the world can I stand on the water? It's because we trust and because we get honest about where we are. How do we keep our eyes on Jesus? Let me tell you this. First of all, don't forget what he has done in your life and how he can do it again. Hey, Peter, all the things that Jesus has already done, you've witnessed. He just fed 5,000 with a few loaves and fishes. That same God is able to keep you afloat, bro. Keep your eyes on Jesus. Don't forget what he already did. In the church, come on, in here today. What has he done in your life? What has he brought you out of? Please don't forget that. Please don't lose that. I would encourage you, don't miss Sundays to miss Sundays. Come in here. We are encouraged. We grow in our faith. We love on one another. We do church not just to do church. We do it to get us prepared for the battles we're going to face this week. We leave here with our faith higher and lifted up and encouraged, knowing we can take it on. We worship together and our faith grows. We hear a message. I'm telling you, I believe some of you today are going to walk out of this place and have the courage to step out of the boat. Have the courage to keep your eyes on Jesus. Even when you face some storms in life, keep your eyes on Jesus. Today, another opportunity you have is to go public with your faith through baptism. I taught on this several weeks ago at our last baptismal, but listen, baptism is for some people today that they've associated their life with themselves, with others. They've put their faith in themselves. They've put their faith in other people. But today, they want to make a public declaration that I am now associating who I am with Jesus Christ. And that's why we always have stuff ready. That's why we remove the excuses, because we know the enemy is going to try to shake your faith. He's going to try to convince you otherwise. So we try to remove every possible excuse. And so today, some of you right now, man, it's working in you. You're like, I don't know. I feel like I need to do this. I feel like I need to step out of the boat, but I'm a little worried. I'm shaking a little bit. I want to encourage you, go all in and go for it. Keep your eyes on Jesus. Keep your eyes on the life that you want to live, and it's a life, I hope, that is centered around him. Let me pray for you today. Lord, we love you. We thank you for what you're doing, what you're about to do. We thank you, God, that we are in a place, in an environment where we can get honest with our doubts. We thank you, God, for the stories in the Bible. It's easy to look at the disciples and see a lot of the good, but Lord, today we also know that there's some in the Bible who had a lot of struggles with their doubts and their faith, and the turbulence of life would hit them and shake them, and they would lose sight of you. They no longer had their eyes on you, but their eyes on what can they do to fix the problem. But today, God, I pray that we would be a church and a people that could be the example for the world to know that it is okay to not be okay, that it is okay to have some doubts. It is okay to get honest about our struggle. It is okay to talk to people close to us that love us, that are for us, and let them know where we stand so that we can love and encourage one another and build up each other in our faith. And finally, that we would be a church that we keep our eyes on you when we're sinking. We keep our eyes on you in the storms of life. We keep our eyes on you to remember that you're the same God of yesterday. You're the same God today. If you did it once, you can do it again. That you are for us, that you do have our best interest in mind, and that we choose to trust and keep our eyes on you. As we continue to pray, I'd ask that nobody look around and everyone be real still in this moment. I believe there's some in the room today that just want to start with a fresh start with him. Maybe you've never completely put your faith in Jesus. Maybe you put 50% of your faith in him. Maybe you've put your faith in him when it's convenient, but when it's not, you put faith in yourself or in other things. I'm so glad that we do serve a God whose grace and mercy extends far beyond anything we can imagine, and that grace and mercy is for you today. In a moment, he can forgive you. In a moment, he can save you once again. In a moment, he can write your name in the Lamb's book of life. In a moment, heaven can rejoice over the one person that says yes to him. So today, if you want to take that step and make a fresh start, I'm not going to embarrass you. I just want to know who I'm praying for. So if you're here and you say, Pastor Brad, that's me today, I'm ready to put my faith completely in Jesus. Would you just slip your hand up so I can see it? Thank you. I see a hand right over here. I see a hand. 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 Come on. Come on. Oh, I love these moments. I love these moments. Some people taking that step. You're stepping out of the boat. I don't know it all. I don't understand it all, but I'm going to step out of the boat and I'm just going to go for it. And I'm telling you, in this moment, Jesus is about to do something in your life.